back in the kitchen. We're still looking at kitchen equipment, so what we should look at now is a blender, because blenders are another rather essential part if you want to cook healthy. They're really important for making soups, smoothies, all sorts of sauces, creams, dips, and so forth. But what do you need to look out for in a blender? What's really necessary? Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that you want to make sure that your blender top is actually big enough. So this one is 2 liters, which is 8.5 cups if you use US measures, because what happens is once you turn on the blender, obviously things are going to move upwards. So if you have a blender with a very small top, you can't really have very much liquid in there before it will overflow, especially when you turn it on. So make sure you actually get a blender with sufficiently large top. And even if you're making just small amounts of something, a large top won't be a problem, whereas a small top will get you into trouble the moment you try making larger amounts. So that's one really important thing. The other thing is you actually want to make sure that your blender is strong enough. So this one has about 2 horsepower. You can do with less, but make sure that your blender's pretty powerful, at least if you want to be able to blend things thoroughly and make them nice and smooth. So that's important. Also, I just washed it, so pour out the water. What you also want to make sure is that your blender actually has different speeds. So this one, and again, you don't have to use this same brand, but the Vitamix is quite nice. As you can see, it has a variable setting and a full speed setting, and on and off, and a dial for the variable setting. So here, if I turn it on, I can start it very slowly and turn off the speed. And that's really important when blending things with lots of liquid like a soup, because if I'd filled my blender top with, say, some sort of stock and broccoli boiled 2-3 minutes so it's nice and tender but not overcooked, and I put it in the blender and I just turned it on all out, or full power, what would happen? Obviously everything would rise upwards, so the broccoli and the stock and the soup and everything would just fly out of the blender and be all over the place, in which case your kitchen table or your kitchen countertop and your walls and the floor of your kitchen would be fed with the broccoli soup, possibly your clothes, but you wouldn't. But if you can turn up the speed slowly, and let's just show this. If I were to put a lot of water in here, see, I'm an amount of water like that. If I turned it on, then I'd have it all over the place. But if I can go slowly, the water will actually stay in the blender. If I went speed, as you can see, things come up, and here I had kept my hand on top of the lid to make sure it didn't blow off, and it was just water. But if I had heavier things in there, everything would be all over the place. So that's really important. And being aware of our resources, I'll naturally save the water rather than pouring it out. Now, another nice thing for your blender is if the blender top actually comes with a rod for stirring. So as you can see here, the rod fits within the lid and it won't actually touch. So the rod is long enough that I can actually stir while it's blending. But it will never quite touch the bottom. Usually with blenders, if there isn't some sort of stirring rod, built into the design, then you have to turn the blender off, take a spoon, stir things, push them towards the bottom, or you get really fed up with that, so you just try using a spoon whilst the blender's on, and if you drop the spoon or stick it too far down into the blender, then the spoon hits the blades, and if you're lucky it's just the spoon that breaks, more likely you'll ruin your blender. So if you can get a blender with that sort of design, that's really nice as well. And you'll get a recipe. I did say we were to look at kitchen equipment before we started cooking, but I'll give you a recipe just to show you, get you an idea of why a powerful blender is good. Let's make a really quick soft ice, healthy one. So what I have here, I have some frozen pears. Yes, I'm just going to throw them in a blender. Some frozen honeydew melon as well, even just in one large ice cube, whatever you want to call it. I have some rice protein powder. And then I will add about a quarter cup of water to start with. Now, if your blender isn't strong enough or capable enough, it will never be able to handle something like this. You know, you would kill it. But here, it will make some noise, but it will turn out fine. Protein pear honeydew melon soft ice. Now, although you can't really taste this on camera, so I'll taste it for you. And it tastes really, really good. So, if you want to check whether your blender is up to it, just try this test. 2 scoops of rice protein powder or some sort of other really clean protein powder with no artificial sweeteners added. About half a pear frozen, and about a sixth or an eighth of a honeydew melon cut into chunks and frozen, and a quarter to half a cup of water. If your blender can handle that and turn it into soft ice like this, then you know you have a winner. But if you were to do this in a rather weak, low-powered traditional blender, that would be an absolute no-go. The blender will still serve you fine for smoothies and stuff, but when you can do things like this, that's when you have a real kitchen utensil on your hands.